What's going on, guys? This is Rob. We're back with DCeased, and oh my god, I can't wait to see how you guys feel about the ending of this story. It's amazing, right? The ending of this is just, oh my god, I'm so excited for this. So, as you guys know with DCeased, right, to get you guys caught up on everything, because these issues come out once a month, so it's been a little while since we did the most recent one. So as always, you'll find a link to the DCeased playlist down in the description in case you want to get caught up, but we'll also make a full story video on the whole DCeased event from beginning to end once this whole thing wraps up. But keeping in mind, what's happened so far is that you basically have the forces of all those who are infected by anti-life. They're basically zombies, right? By all standards of measurement, they're effectively zombies, and they're led by Darkseid, and they're literally cutting like a swath through the universe, and they're making their way towards Earth 2, which is like the second version of Earth. It's basically the new Earth that all the different characters of the survivors basically live on. And this battle has been raging on for a little while, right? Like, it's been going for some time. Now, at this moment, one of the things to remember is Lobo basically steps in. Now, for those of you guys who are unfamiliar with Lobo, he's amazing, but ridiculous at the same time. The idea behind Lobo is he was designed to be like a DC comic parody of Wolverine from Marvel Comics, right? They're like, Lobo's just ridiculous, he's over the top, he's nigh indestructible, right? It's almost impossible to hurt this guy, if not truly impossible. I mean, his healing factor's absurd. It's nuts, right? I mean, it's crazy what this guy's capable of. The important thing here, though, is that Lobo's a guy who is every bit on par with Superman in terms of power, and this guy showing up on the scene is a huge deal, because it's not enough to like turn the entirety of the battle in favor of the superheroes, but it is enough to help them stave off their own impending death a little bit longer. But as we know with DCeased, this is as much an analysis of the nature of superheroes as it is just like an end of the universe type of event. And so what you end up getting here is, of course, Big Barda and Scott Free, right? Mr. Miracle. If you're not familiar with them, they're not overly important. The big thing about this, though, with their characters is that they were initially infected. A cure has since been developed, but the cure is on the old Earth. It's not on the new Earth. And so the result is that they don't have the ability to easily cure people in this area. More so than that, while Big Barda and Scott Free were cured, their son Jacob has not been cured. And in fact, he's infected now. And this is where the kind of personality-driven element of the story comes into play, because one of the things that happens is while Alfred Pennyworth is basically narrating all of this stuff, one of the things he talks about is that he never really understood the kind of sacrifice that a parent would make for their child until he became a parent himself. Having like Bruce Wayne as kind of a surrogate son, right? Really his son by all standards of measurement, and that in experiencing what it meant to have kids of his own, he understands the sacrifice that a parent would make for their child. And so what he talks about here is that in this instance, Jacob, the son of Big Barda and Scott Free, attacks his parents because they can't bring themselves to kill their own child. Now, for Alfred himself, right, remember, he's basically imbued with the Spectre. Now, of course, the Spectre is basically the embodiment of God's wrath. It's one of the cool things to know about DC Comics is that, like, Judeo-Christianity, right, it does exist in DC. The God of Abraham, the Judeo-Christian God, does exist in DC Comics. He's called the Presence. But the thing about the Spectre is that he is as much a plot device as he is an essential character, right? Like, he's a guy who really just kind of shows up whenever he's needed, and sometimes his power is enough to just end the threat immediately. Other times it's not. He's like the living tribunal in Marvel Comics. Could he just wave his hand and end the problem? Sure, but like, because of whatever's going on, for some reason he can't. And in the case of Alfred, while, you know, despite the fact that he's imbued with all this astronomical power, there is a bit of inner turmoil going on here. The first is that as the embodiment of God's wrath or God's judgment, right, the role of the Spectre kind of changes, really even just within the confines of this story, it's kind of nuts, that his initial motivation is to just destroy everything. Right? I mean, it's really him fighting against the nature of the Spectre itself. That's what it does. It, like, you know, fire, brimstone. The Spectre's Old Testament, man. Like, he just does that kind of stuff. But Alfred himself, even filled with anger and rage towards those who were basically zombies, in the sense that it's because of them that he lost Bruce Wayne, and he lost Dick Grayson, and he lost Jason Todd, and the people who were close to him, right? Damian Wayne is the only survivor. That's why he's taken on the mantle of Batman. That, in reality, Alfred just wants to annihilate everything. But it's kind of funny because in the midst of all this fight, right, this great big huge fight that's going on, Damian Wayne has been infected. And so seemingly it's only a matter of time before Damian succumbs to the virus. Now, how fast people succumb to this is relative to the importance of the character, right? Like, if someone who doesn't matter is infected with the virus, they turn immediately. If it's somebody like Damian Wayne, it's, I'll hold on as best I can, you know, and he lasts just long enough to basically, you know, somehow find a way out of it or something along those lines. And so it's kind of cool here because what you end up having is Damian speaking directly to Alfred. And this is is one of the huge things that Tom Taylor did with Damian's character, because when Damian was originally introduced in DC Comics, way back during Grant Morrison's Batman run, during the Batman and Sons story arc, that what we had was Damian who was trained by the League of Assassins, and he didn't really care. He would kill anybody for any crime. It didn't matter what it was, right? Like, those of you guys who remember the movie Batman Begins, when Liam Neeson's character was saying, like, we just need to kill anybody who commits crime, because the reality is that the criminal justice system basically allows those individuals who commit crimes to have a second chance, and criminals rely on that second chance to basically better their abilities to commit crimes without getting caught. That Damian was very much the same way. Damian was like, if you shoplift, you're dead, right? If you dive into a pool when you're not supposed to, you're dead, right? For those of you guys who recognize the TikTok meme, no diving. But like, it's that kind of a thing, right? Like, Damian was just super hardcore. And in fact, even in a lot of ways, it was Batman just having to reel Damian in. It was Batman having to teach him, you don't just kill anybody because they commit any kind of a crime. The reality here is sometimes you let the small fish go so they can lead us to the big fish, and other times, some crimes just don't matter, right? Like, I mean, a person shoplifted. It sucks for the person who owns the store, but in the grand scheme of all the crime that's committed in Gotham City, it doesn't really matter all that much. And so kind of reeling Damian in, and then at the same time, teaching Damian to kind of focus on humanity and to focus on the idea that people can become better, hence the reason why everybody deserves a second chance, that initially Damian didn't take to it, and he very much rejected it. What this story shows is the evolution of Damian over the years. Yes, it's an alternate reality story. No, it does not take place in the main DC universe, but the progression and nature of Damian is still the same. And so where Damian's talking to Alfred and saying, look, you can't just kill everybody, right? I know you want to, I know you desire to because of all the things that you lost. Everything that's been destroyed, everything that you care about, Alfred, has been totally destroyed. I know that you are angry, hence the reason why you are now the host of the Spectre, but you have to be better than that. You can't destroy everything. And even if you desire to, hold off on doing that for me. If you ever loved me and if you ever respected my memory and what the mantle of Batman stood for, do not go through and just kill everybody. Now that's an important distinction to understand here, because Alfred could do that. As the Spectre, right, he could literally go through and just annihilate everybody here, and it'd be very, very easy for him to do. And so this is one of those things where, like, it kind of allows the story to continue, but it focuses more on the nature of Alfred. Now, for the most part, one of the things that goes on here is that Alfred starts to realize there's something much bigger afoot. That yes, like Erebos, who's kind of like the main enemy that we haven't really seen yet, but basically the one that is the reason why this anti-life virus exists in the first place, right? So you can kind of call him the creator of the virus, not really patient zero, but the main catalyst behind all this, that Erebus starts to realize the nature of the heroes, that they won't stop fighting, that regardless of what happens, they will eventually find a way to win. And so in order to quell that, instead of having this kind of battle of attrition where Erebos is just kind of sending his forces in over time, he sends them all in at once. Just this overwhelming force. And it's a really smart move to make, because normally you could go with a battle of attrition, right? You could just have a virtually endless wave of enemies that constantly come at you and just wear you down to the point that you can't necessarily fight. But because the nature of superheroes is that they are all effectively Mary Sue's, in the sense that it's like, well, against all odds, we'll somehow find a way. The best way to defeat them is to throw all your forces at them at once. Such a massive, overwhelming force that there's seemingly no way to win. So not only does Darkseid and all his forces arrive on the scene, Supergirl, the whole 9 yards, right? Because she's infected, right? So the other thing that happens is Warworld follows suit. Now, Warworld is a huge deal. For those of you guys who don't know, think of Warworld in DC Comics as very similar to like the Death Star from Star Wars, right? One, it is an actual world where people just fight in gladiatorial combat, right? That's one of the big things about it. But the other part of Warworld is it is literally a destructive vessel, right? It can just fire off beams of light that will eradicate an entire planet, right? And that's literally what's going on here, that when Warworld shows up, that Alfred actually takes off, right? He literally leaves, and he says, like, I'm needed elsewhere, right? There's somewhere else that I need to be, and that leads to Jonathan Kent, the son of Superman, stepping in. Now remember, Superman himself is off on the other side of the universe with the Green Lanterns. They split their forces in half. One half was to go save a world that was being attacked by Darkseid, lest that world's population end up being turned, and Darkseid's forces bolster by like 16 billion, with a be a massive number. And so splitting those numbers in half, you only have really half the superheroes that are available fighting here. And so Jonathan stepping in, one of the cool things about his character is much like Damian's evolution between being the just murderous son of Batman to becoming an actual superhero. Jonathan wasn't really murderous, but he struggled with confidence. He lived under his father's shadow, right? He's the son of Superman. And that in the DC universe, all these superheroes out there model themselves in some capacity after Superman. He's like the guy, right? And so like when you're the son of Superman, you're in the shadow of presumably the greatest superhero to ever live. And so Jonathan's evolution as a character was breaking out from under his father's shadow and becoming his own man. And one of the ways in which he does this is facing off directly against Darkseid. Now, can Jonathan defeat Darkseid while Darkseid's empowered by the anti-life virus as well as a yellow lantern ring, which basically allows him to feed on fear and bolster his power? No, Jonathan cannot win under that circumstance. One, he's not powerful enough, and two, Darkseid is far more capable, far more knowledgeable, and a lot more experienced in combat than Jonathan is. And so Brainiac ultimately steps in, right? Brainiac being like, well, technically he's the 9th level intelligence, but a major supervillain. And so the result of this is that because Brainiac is by all standards of measurement a living computer, that Darkseid infects Brainiac with the anti-life virus, which in turn leads to Brainiac taking off to his own ship. Now, the reason why Brainiac does this ties directly into the nature of Brainiac. Remember, one of the big things about his character is that over the years, throughout his entire publication history in DC Comics, this guy travels from one planet to the next, basically conquering and destroying it. But whenever he does, he steals a singular city from that planet, shrinks it down in order to preserve the knowledge of that planet and by extension expand his own knowledge, and then he literally just kind of keeps it as a sort of trophy. And there are hundreds, if not thousands of these cities because of the amount of time that Brainiac has spent traveling the spaceways and conquering worlds. And so when he shows up here, that what Brainiac starts doing is actually just, starts destroying each one of these cities. But then Cyborg shows up. Now, under normal circumstances, Victor Stone is about as useless as tits on a boar hog. This guy doesn't do anything, right? He serves no useful purpose. But in this story, he does, and it's a pretty epic one. So because of the fact that Brainiac is a living computer and Cyborg is quite literally one half human and one half machine, that where Erebus, in control of Brainiac, tries to infiltrate Cyborg, Cyborg realizes Erebus can't do that. Cyborg himself is immune to the anti-life virus. Now, we've known that since the beginning, but we didn't know the extent of it. And so what this means is that with Cyborg being impenetrable, right, somebody that Erebus literally can't get a hold of, that what Cyborg does is he seizes control of Brainiac's prime systems, if you want to call it that, and absorbs Brainiac's consciousness into himself. Quite literally, Cyborg merges with Brainiac. And what it does is it not only boosts the intelligence of Cyborg, giving him a much more intuitive understanding of exactly what he needs to do in order for the superheroes to win, but it also grants him all the knowledge of Brainiac himself. And that's when he comes up with an idea. And he literally travels back to all the superheroes and he's like, Lois Lane. And she's like, yes. And he's like, where's Kandor? And as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh my God, right? Like, oh my God. Because I totally forgot about Kandor. It never occurred to me to think about Kandor. Now, we'll talk about why that matters here in a second, but jumping back over to Jonathan Kent and his fight with Darkseid, he's able to hold his own to a degree. But what happens is something else catches his attention. And what he does is he races away from the fight and he flies to Warworld. And the reason why is because he realizes Warworld is powering up its cannon. And Warworld is intending to annihilate the entirety of the planet Earth in one fell swoop. It's a genius move, right? Send in all the soldiers, right? Send in like all the foot soldiers so that all the superheroes are distracted in fighting them. And in that distraction, use your primary weapon to take everybody out. Are some of your soldiers gonna die? Sure, but if your goal is to win by any means necessary, then of what relevance are soldiers that you see as easily replaceable? It's diabolical, but it would work. And so what's so crazy about this is that Jonathan is able to hold off the blast of Warworld, right? Saving the Earth. But as he falls back to the planet, thousands of Kryptonians are making their way into the battle. Now, here's the reason why, and this is where it all gets nuts, right? This is where it all gets crazy. Remember, Kandor was a city on Krypton that Brainiac stole before Krypton's destruction. Like, literally, Kryptonians need to be exposed to a yellow sun in order for their powers to thrive. And so what happened is that literally because of Cyborg, the various Kryptonians in the bottled city of Kandor were freed from their captivity and returned to their normal size. So now all these Kryptonians, you basically have thousands of Superman just flying around, right? Superman and Superwoman. This changes the nature of the battle entirely. But here's the thing, man, there's still this amazing moment that happens, right? There's still this amazing moment that comes up, right? So like Superman arrives back on the scene, right? Like him and all the other forces are basically back in the battle now. Superman, of course, rescues his son, which is really, really cool. And then Alfred returns with the cure that he took from like Earth, right? Like literally brought just these huge shipping containers full of the cure and flew it to the other side of space in order to basically cure all those who were infected on Earth too. And so of course, Damian Wayne is one of the people who's cured here, but the other person that's cured is Darkseid. Literally, it's one of the coolest things, right? So like you literally have like, you've got Mary Marvel, right? From like Shazam's sister, basically. She's like holding down Darkseid, Jonathan Kent's holding down Darkseid, and then like Lobo comes up and just like grabs one of the cure vials and like smashes it in the mouth of Darkseid and cures Darkseid. So then Darkseid returns to normal, right? And then he's like, what's happened? And he's basically told by like Alfred and Superman, you were basically infected with the anti-life virus, you were being used as a pawn. Now, Alfred immediately wants to destroy Darkseid, right? He wants to eradicate him, but the response to Superman is, no, we cannot kill Darkseid. One, Darkseid by himself is more than enough for any one of us here. Darkseid, imbued with the power of a Sinestro Core ring, a Yellow Lantern ring, amplifies his power even further, right? Like, Darkseid is incensed that Erebus had used him as a pawn in a campaign to conquer the universe. So what does Darkseid do? Darkseid joins the superheroes and turns against Erebus. And that's the thing, man. Erebus has no idea what's coming, right? It's like that guy said to John Lithgow in that movie Ricochet. You didn't beat him, you just pissed him off, and now you're because now he's gonna be out for blood. With that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.